I'm Thomas, 34 years old, and I just watched my own family destroy the one thing I built to escape them. Before I tell you about the handcuffs, the lawsuits, and the moment my parents realized they had lost everything, I want to know who is riding shotgun with me on this one. Let me know which city or state you're watching from in the comments below. It started with the kind of phone call that slices through a deep sleep like a razor blade. My phone was vibrating against the nightstand wood. A harsh, drilling sound in the silence of my downtown penthouse. I squinted at the screen, eyes burning. 2:14 a.m. The name on the caller ID made my stomach drop harder than the elevator in this building ever could. Arthur Sterling. Arthur wasn't just a neighbor at my vacation property in Laguna Beach. He was a retired Supreme Court judge, a man who valued silence and order more than he valued oxygen. He didn't call to chat. He called to pass sentence. I swiped right, voice thick with sleep. Arthur? Is everything okay? Thomas. His voice was clipped, precise, and completely devoid of warmth. Your house is a zoo. Actually, that's an insult to zoos. Zoos have keepers. Your property currently has a riot. I sat up, the sheets pooling around my waist. What? That's impossible. The house is empty. I'm in the city. It is certainly not empty, Arthur replied. I just watched a lime green Lamborghini jump the curb and decapitate my prize-winning rose bushes. There are people on your roof, Thomas. And unless my hearing aids are malfunctioning, someone is blasting bass-heavy rap music loud enough to rattle my windows. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. I'm not renting it out. No one should be there. Well, you have 30 minutes to resolve this, Arthur said, his tone final. After that, I call the SWAT team. And you know I have the number on speed dial. The line went dead. I scrambled out of bed, adrenaline flooding my system, chasing away the fatigue. I grabbed my iPad from the desk and tapped the security app icon with shaking fingers. The loading circle spun for a second, the longest second of my life, and then the feed popped up. I stopped breathing. My sanctuary, my escape, the place I had poured every ounce of my blood, sweat, and salary into for the last 5 years. It was gone. In its place was a scene from a bad music video. The front lawn, usually manicured to perfection, was a parking lot of high-end metal. Ferraris, Porsches, G-Wagons parked haphazardly on the grass. The feed form, the living room camera made me gag. There were at least 50 people crammed into the space. Red wine, my red wine, was being sprayed like water. A guy I didn't recognize was using my custom Italian leather sofa as a trampoline, his muddy sneakers digging into the white fabric. Who are these people? I whispered to the empty room. Then, I swiped to the patio camera, and the rage didn't just rise. It detonated. Sitting at the head of my outdoor teak dining table, looking like royalty holding court, were Jerry and Linda Vance. My parents. They weren't trying to stop the chaos. They were fueling it. My father was holding a cigar, ash dropping directly onto the deck, and laughing at something a young girl in a bikini was saying. My mother was wearing a silk robe. I zoomed in. My chest tightened. That wasn't just any robe. That was the limited edition silk kimono a client had brought me from Kyoto. It was a collector's item, and she was wearing it over her clothes, spilling champagne down the front of it. But the centerpiece of this nightmare was standing on the edge of the infinity pool. Caleb, my younger brother, the golden child. He was holding a microphone, screaming something to the crowd, gesturing wildly. He looked drunk, high on power, and completely in his element. I turned up the volume on the iPad. The audio crackled, heavy with bass, but Caleb's voice cut through. Welcome to the Vance Villa, Caleb screamed. My parents got this for me for closing my first big deal. Drink up. It's all on the house. I stared at the screen, frozen. His villa? His deal? Caleb hadn't closed a deal in his life. He was 26, unemployed, and still living in my parents' basement because he was finding himself. Then, through the camera's microphone, I heard my mother's voice. She was shouting over the music to my father. The fidelity was surprisingly clear. Look at him, Jerry. He's so happy. He deserves this. Thomas is going to flip when he sees the bill, my father yelled back, chuckling. My mother waved her hand dismissively, knocking a crystal glass off the table. It shattered, but she didn't even look down. Oh, let Thomas complain. He has plenty of money. He doesn't need all this space anyway. He's never here. It's selfish of him to keep it locked up when Caleb needs a venue to network. Selfish. The word echoed in my empty penthouse. I watched a stranger vomit into the pool. I watched my brother toast to his own imaginary success with a bottle of vintage Pinot Noir I had been saving for my wedding day, if I ever had one. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the iPad. A cold, terrifying calm washed over me. This wasn't just a party. This was a declaration of war. They weren't just trespassing. They were cannibalizing my life, stripping parts of my success to feed Caleb's ego, just like they always had. But this time they had made a fatal error. They did it on camera. And they did it in a property held by an LLC, not a family trust. I walked to the closet and pulled on a hoodie and jeans. I didn't pack a bag. I wouldn't be staying. I grabbed my keys, the heavy fob of my Panamera. I looked at the screen one last time. Caleb was now trying to moonwalk on the edge of the hot tub. Enjoy it while it lasts, Caleb, I said softly. I dialed 911 as I stepped into the elevator. 911. What is your emergency? I'd like to report a break-in in progress at 4400 Cliffside Drive. Multiple intruders. Significant property damage. And I believe they are armed. I wasn't sure about the weapons, but I knew my father usually carried a pistol in his glove box. And with that crowd, I wasn't taking chances. I wanted the police there fast. Are you in the house, sir? No, I said, the elevator doors sliding open to the garage. But I'm on my way, and tell the officers to hurry. The owner is coming, and he's not happy. I hung up, got into my car, and fired the engine. The exhaust roared, echoing off the concrete walls. It sounded like a beast waking up. I had a 2-hour drive ahead of me. Plenty of time to remember exactly why I had to destroy my family to save myself. The Interstate 5 South was a ribbon of darkness, punctuated only by the red streaks of taillights. I merged onto the highway, the speedometer climbing. 80, 90. The leather steering wheel felt cold under my grip, or maybe that was just my hands losing circulation. Every mile closer to Laguna Beach felt like traveling backward in time. You have to understand, the scene on that iPad wasn't a one-time mistake. It was the climax of a 30-year tragedy. In the Vance household, there were 2 roles cast at birth and unchangeable. Caleb was the star. I was the stagehand. My parents, Jerry and Linda, weren't wealthy. Dad sold insurance, Mom was a part-time receptionist. But they had a taste for the high life that their bank account couldn't support. When I was born, they were too busy trying to make ends meet. I was raised by babysitters and television. But when Caleb came along 8 years later, the world stopped. Caleb was cute. Caleb had charisma. Caleb was going to be the one who saved them, the one who made them famous or rich or whatever void they were trying to fill. I remembered the day I got my acceptance letter to Stanford Architecture. I had worked 2 jobs in high school, flipping burgers and mowing lawns, just to pay for the extra math tutoring I needed. I ran into the kitchen, waving the envelope. Mom, Dad, I got in. Mom didn't even look up from the brochure she was reading. That's nice, Thomas. Keep it down, Caleb is napping. But it's Stanford, I pressed, feeling that desperate need for approval that acts like a poison in your veins. I need to send the deposit by Friday. The college fund. Is it ready? They froze. Dad exchanged a look with Mom. A look I would come to recognize as the universal sign of we screwed Thomas over. About that, Dad said, clearing his throat. We had to dip into it. Dip into it? I felt the blood drain from my face. How much? Caleb needed braces, Mom said defensively. And then there was that acting camp in Los Angeles. It was a huge opportunity for him, Thomas. An agent was going to be there. You spent my entire college fund on acting camp? My voice cracked. That money was Grandma's inheritance for education. Don't be selfish, Dad snapped. We're a family. We invest where the potential is. Caleb has a gift. You're smart, you'll figure it out. You can take loans. Or work. And that was it. The script was written. I worked 3 jobs through college. I graduated with honors and a mountain of debt. I ate ramen noodles while Caleb posted photos of his new dirt bike. Bought with the money I sent home to help with the bills. The speedometer hit 95. I eased off the gas, forcing myself to breathe. The real kicker wasn't the money. It was the lack of respect. No matter how high I climbed, I was never enough. I started my own firm at 28. By 30, I was designing landscapes for tech billionaires. By 32, I bought the Laguna house. I didn't buy it to party. I bought it for silence. I designed every inch of it. The way the light hit the travertine floors in the morning, the specific species of drought-resistant succulents in the garden. It was my art. It was the physical manifestation of the order and control I never had growing up. My parents hated it. It's too cold, Mom had said the one time I invited them for dinner. She wiped her greasy fingers on the linen napkins. Not cozy. No soul. Why don't you let Caleb decorate? Dad had suggested, looking around with a sneer. He has an eye for trends. He could make this place pop. Caleb, at the time, was trying to become a DJ. His eye for trends involved neon lights and shag carpets. No, I had said firmly. This is my house. My rules. That was the first time I saw the hatred in their eyes. Real hatred. Because I had something they wanted, and I wasn't handing it over. They started calling me Scrooge. They told the extended family I was hoarding my wealth while my brother struggled. Struggled? Caleb's struggle was deciding which pair of $300 sneakers to buy with the allowance Mom slipped him from her retirement account. Last year was the breaking point. I was up for a massive promotion partner in the firm. I had a dinner with the senior partners. It was crucial. 10 minutes before the dinner, my phone rang. It was Mom, sobbing. It's Caleb. He's in jail. What did he do? I asked, buttoning my cuffs, checking my reflection. I looked calm, but my stomach was churning. There was a misunderstanding at a club. Assault. Thomas, they set bail at $10,000. We don't have it. I'm about to walk into the biggest meeting of my life, Mom. Please. He can't spend the night in there. He's fragile. He's not like you. He can't handle the rough stuff. He's not like you. Meaning, you are a workhorse, he is a show pony. You suffer so he can shine. I can't do it, Mom. If you don't send the money, she hissed, her voice dropping an octave. Don't ever call us again, you ungrateful brat. After everything we sacrificed for you. I hung up. I went to the dinner. I got the promotion. But at 2 a.m. that night, guilt gnawing at me like a rat, I wired the money to the lawyer. I bailed him out. Again. And what did I get? A text from Caleb the next day. Took you long enough. The food in there sucked. No thank you. No apology. That was the day I stopped sending checks. I set up a loop in my financial software to auto-reject their requests. I told them I was having cash flow issues. They didn't believe me. They knew I had the house. They knew I had the car. And it ate them alive. I saw the sign for Laguna Canyon Road. I flicked the blinker on. Tonight wasn't just a party. It was their revenge. They were punishing me for cutting off the supply. They were showing me that boundaries were just lines in the sand, and they were the tide. I thought about the custody battle my business partner was going through. He once told me, Thomas, the only way to win against irrational people is to be the most rational person in the room. You need documentation. You need leverage. You need to be cold. I tapped the steering wheel. Cold. I could do cold. I checked the time on the dashboard. 3:45 a.m. The police should be arriving soon. My phone buzzed again. It was Sarah, my personal assistant. I paid her triple time to be available for emergencies, but I rarely used it. Tonight, I had texted her while running to the car. I have the files. Sarah's voice came over the Bluetooth speakers. She sounded wide awake. I pulled the property deed, the LLC formation documents, and the insurance policy. I also found the email thread from last Christmas where you explicitly told your father, in writing, that no one is allowed at the beach house without your presence. You're a lifesaver, Sarah. There's something else. She hesitated. I ran a quick search on Caleb's social media handles. He's not just partying, Thomas. What do you mean? He set up an Eventbrite page. The Golden Mansion Party. He sold tickets. General admission was $200. VIP access to the master bedroom, your bedroom, was $500. I nearly swerved into the guardrail. He sold tickets to my house? He made about $15,000 tonight. It's all going to a PayPal account linked to Linda Vance. My mother. The air left my lungs. It wasn't just Caleb being an idiot. It was an orchestrated business venture. My parents were laundering their envy into cash. They were pimping out my sanctuary to strangers. Print it all, I said, my voice sounding like gravel. Email it to Officer Martinez at the Laguna PD. I'll text you his contact. And Sarah? Yes. Find out if Arthur Sterling is awake. Tell him I'm 10 minutes away, and tell him to bring his cane. He might want to watch this. I hung up and pressed the accelerator. The engine growled, a low, menacing sound that matched the vibration in my chest. They wanted to play house? Fine. I was coming home, and I was bringing a wrecking ball. I smelled the party before I saw it. Turning onto Cliffside Drive usually brought the salty, clean scent of the Pacific Ocean mixed with jasmine. Tonight, the air was thick with the acrid stench of burning rubber, cheap marijuana, and stale beer. The quiet, exclusive cul-de-sac looked like the aftermath of a riot. My headlights swept over the chaos. There was a matte black G-Wagon parked diagonally across my driveway, blocking access. A red Ferrari was up on the sidewalk, two of its wheels crushing a sprinkler head that was now spewing a geyser of water into the air, soaking the car's leather interior because they'd left the top down. But it was the noise that hit me hardest. The bass wasn't just loud. It was physical. It thumped against the car doors, a relentless, disrespectful heartbeat. I pulled the Panamera up behind the G-Wagon, effectively blocking it in. I killed the engine. For a moment, I just sat there. I looked at the house, my modern masterpiece of glass and steel, glowing like a lantern in the night. Shadows danced in every window. Bodies, hundreds of them. I saw a silhouette stumble out of the front door and vomit into my planter box of rare Japanese maples. I opened the car door and stepped out. The cool ocean breeze hit my face, contrasting with the heat of my anger. I walked toward the front gate, my boots crunching on broken glass. A shattered bottle of Grey Goose lying in the gutter. A guy in a security vest, a vest that said Vance Event Staff, stepped in front of me. He looked about 20 with a neck tattoo and eyes that couldn't focus. Whoa, hold up, bro, he slurred, holding out a hand. Private event. Ticket holders only. Or you got a VIP pass. I looked at his hand, then up to his face. Get out of my way. He laughed. Look, tough guy. Unless you're on the list, you're not getting in. Caleb said no scrubs. Caleb said. I let out a dry, humorless chuckle. Tell me, how much is Caleb paying you? $50 and free drinks. The kid smirked. Well, you better hope those drinks were worth a felony charge for aiding and abetting a burglary, I said, stepping past him. Hey! He grabbed my shoulder. I spun around. I didn't shout. I didn't swing. I just looked at him with the kind of stare I reserve for incompetent contractors who try to cut corners on load-bearing walls. My name is Thomas Vance. I own this property. The police are 3 minutes away. If your hand is still on me in 2 seconds, I will add assault to the list of charges I'm pressing against you personally. The kid's eyes widened. He dropped his hand like it was burned. I didn't know. Leave, I commanded. Now. He didn't argue. He turned and sprinted down the street, abandoning his post. I walked up the driveway. The destruction was worse up close. The custom mahogany front door was propped open with a statue. Not just a rock, a statue. A bronze bust of Aristotle that I had bought at an auction in Greece. It was lying on its side, scratching the wood. I stepped into the foyer. The heat hit me first. The HVAC system was clearly overwhelmed by the sheer number of bodies. It smelled of sweat and desperation. The main hallway was a gauntlet of disrespect. A girl in heels was trying to carve her initials into the drywall with a key. A couple was making out aggressively against my grand piano. I walked through the crowd like a ghost. No one noticed me. I was older than most of them, dressed simply in a hoodie, invisible in their world of flash and noise. I reached the main living area. There, on the wall, was my favorite painting, an abstract original I had spent 3 years tracking down. Someone had drawn a mustache on it with a Sharpie. I felt a vein in my forehead throb. The urge to start swinging was overwhelming. I wanted to grab these intruders by their designer collars and throw them through the windows. But I stopped myself. Show, don't tell. I needed them to show me everything. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I panned across the room. I captured faces. I captured the guy doing lines of white powder on my kitchen island, right directly on the unsealed Carrara marble. That stain would never come out. Then I saw the patio doors. They were wide open. I stepped out onto the deck. The cool night air felt like a slap. The pool lights were changing colors, purple, green, red. And there they were, the toxic triad. My parents were holding court at the large outdoor table. They had moved my heater lamps closer, creating a cozy little nest of corruption. Linda, my mother, was pouring wine for a group of young women who looked bored. She was beaming. She looked happier than I had ever seen her at any of my graduations. Yes, well, Mom was saying, gesturing broadly with a cigarette in her hand. We told Thomas to buy this place. He was hesitant, you know? He's so risk-averse. But we pushed him. We said, the family needs a retreat. And really, without our guidance, he'd probably be living in a shoebox. I stood in the shadows, recording. Totally, one of the girls said, popping gum. So like, is Thomas here? Oh God, no. My dad chimed in. He was wearing a fedora. Why was he wearing a fedora? Thomas is a bore. All work, no play. He's probably asleep in the city, hugging his spreadsheets. We're the fun ones. Caleb is amazing though, the girl said. This party is lit. Caleb is a visionary, Mom agreed, nodding solemnly. He just needs the right platform. This house, it's really his stage. We're thinking of transferring the deed to him, actually, for tax purposes. My blood ran cold. Transferring the deed? They were insane. They were actually delusional enough to think they could steal a house like a candy bar. Then the music cut. The sudden silence was deafening. A collective groan went up from the crowd. Yo, what happened to the beat? Someone yelled. I looked over at the outdoor DJ booth. Caleb was furiously tapping at the mixer. I stepped out of the shadows. I walked to the main power panel on the exterior wall. I had just pulled the main breaker for the outdoor circuit. The party's over, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the sudden quiet, it carried. Heads turned. The crowd parted. Caleb looked up, squinting against the pool lights. He saw me. For a second, he looked like a deer in headlights. Then the mask slipped back on. The arrogance returned. Thomas, he shouted, throwing his arms wide as if welcoming me to his home. Bro, you made it. I told everyone you were too stiff to come. But look at you, fashionably late. He jumped down from the DJ booth and strutted toward me. He was wearing a white linen suit. It was stained with wine. Get everyone out, I said, my voice low. Relax, man, Caleb laughed, clapping a hand on my shoulder. I flinched, brushing it off violently. He stepped back, feigning hurt. Whoa, hostility. Chill out. We're just warming the place up for you. You sold tickets, I said. Caleb's smile faltered. Cover charge, to pay for the cleaning. I'm responsible like that. You sold tickets to my bedroom, Caleb. Supply and demand, bro capitalism. You love capitalism, right? Thomas. I looked past Caleb. My parents were standing up. Dad looked annoyed, like I had interrupted his favorite TV show. Mom looked guilty, pulling the silk robe tighter around herself. Thomas, don't make a scene, Mom hissed, walking over. These are Caleb's friends. Important people. Influencers. Influencers. I pointed at the guy passed out in the bushes. Is that an influencer? Mom, look at this place. Look at what you've done. It's just things, Thomas, she snapped. Material objects. You care more about your precious floors than your own brother's happiness. He's finally networking. He's finally happy. He's committing a felony, I said. And so are you. Oh, stop with the lawyer talk, Dad grunted, stepping forward. He tried to look imposing, but he just looked like an old man in a silly hat. We're family. What's yours is ours. We raised you. We fed you. You owe us. I owe you. I stepped closer to him. I was taller than him now. I paid off the mortgage on your house in Ohio. I paid for your knee surgery, Dad. I paid Caleb's bail. 3 times. I don't owe you a damn thing. You see. Dad turned to the crowd, playing to the audience. This is what money does to people. It makes them cold. It makes them forget where they came from. A few people booed. Actually booed me. In my own house. Caleb smirked. He felt the crowd on his side. Get out of here, Thomas. You're killing the vibe. Go back to the city. We'll clean up in the morning. Yeah, Mom added. Go home, Thomas. We'll discuss your attitude later. I looked at them. Really looked at them. I saw the entitlement etched into every wrinkle. They didn't love me. They didn't even like me. They looked at me and saw a walking ATM machine that had malfunctioned. And in that moment, the last thread of obligation I felt, the guilt, the duty, the desire to please, snapped. It didn't break with a bang. It broke with a whisper. I checked my watch. 3:58 a.m. I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice calm. But you are. Sirens. First one wail, distant. Then 2. Then a chorus. Blue and red lights flashed against the canyon walls, bouncing off the infinity pool, turning the water into a strobe light of authority. The crowd froze. You called the cops? Caleb asked, his voice cracking. He sounded 12 years old again. On your own family? No, I said, pulling out my phone and showing him the screen where Officer Martinez had just texted, "We're at the gate. I called the cops on intruders, and I'm about to press charges." The sound of sirens has a magical effect on fake friends. The moment the first cruiser screeched to a halt at the bottom of the driveway, the influencers scattered like cockroaches when the kitchen light flips on. People were jumping over the hedges, scrambling over the neighbor's fence, abandoning their half-finished drinks and, in some cases, their shoes. But the toxic triad couldn't run. They were trapped in the spotlight of their own making. Caleb's face went from arrogant to pale white in 3 seconds flat. You have to tell them it's a misunderstanding, he stammered, backing up until he hit the edge of the DJ booth. Thomas, seriously, I have a record. If I get picked up for this, it's a violation of my probation. I know, I said. I didn't move. I stood like a statue in the center of the chaos. You can't do this, Mom screamed. She rushed at me, grabbing my arm with claw-like fingers. He's your brother. He's flesh and blood. Tell them to go away. Get your hands off me, I said, shaking her off. Jerry, do something, she shrieked at my father. Dad stepped up, puffing out his chest. He adjusted his fedora, as if trying to summon some authority. Now listen here, son. You're going to go out there and tell those officers that we have permission to be here. You're going to tell them this is a family gathering. But I didn't give you permission, I replied. You implied it, Dad shouted. By having this house and not using it. It's a sin to waste resources. We're just maximizing the utility. Maximizing utility? I pointed to the shattered glass door. Is that maximizing utility? Is snorting coke on my kitchen island maximizing utility? You're being dramatic, Mom spat. We can fix a door. But you can't fix a criminal record. Do you want to destroy your brother's life? I'm not destroying it, I said, watching the police lights dance across her furious face. I'm just refusing to save it this time. Heavy boots pounded on the pavement. Voices shouted, "Police! Stay where you are." Officer Martinez walked onto the deck. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with a face that had seen every lie a criminal could invent. I had met him a few times at community HOA meetings. He knew me. "Mr. Vance?" Martinez asked, looking at me. Then he looked at the crowd. "We got multiple noise complaints, reports of property damage, and illegal parking. And Arthur Sterling says there's a riot." "Officer!" Dad stepped forward before I could speak. He put on his best innocent old man voice. "Officer, thank goodness you're here. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. My son here," he pointed at me, "is having a bit of a mental breakdown. He invited us for a party and now he's trying to kick everyone out because he had a mood swing." I stared at him. The audacity was breathtaking. Martinez looked at Dad, then at me. "Is that true, Mr. Vance?" "No," I said clearly. "I did not invite them. I was in the city. I was alerted by my security system. These people broke in. They picked the lock. I have it on video. They have damaged my property, and they are selling tickets to unauthorized events in my home." "Liar!" Mom screamed. She actually stomped her foot. "We are his parents. We have rights." "Do you have a key, ma'am?" Martinez asked calmly. Well, no," she stuttered. "But we have something better," Dad interrupted. He reached into his jacket pocket. A smug, triumphant smile spread across his face. It was the smile of a gambler who thinks he has an ace up his sleeve. "We have a contract," Dad announced. I frowned. "A contract?" Dad pulled out a piece of paper. It was wrinkled, stained with red wine, and looked like it had been ripped from a spiral notebook. He handed it to Officer Martinez. "Read it," Dad said, crossing his arms. "Our son gave us full managerial rights to this property last month. Indefinitely. We are the acting landlords. So technically, he is the one trespassing on our event." Caleb perked up. He evidently knew about this plan. "Yeah, exactly. Checkmate, bro." I walked over to Martinez. "May I?" Martinez held the paper so I could see it. It was handwritten, in blue ink. "I, Thomas Vance, hereby grant Jerry and Linda Vance full access and authority over the property at 4400 Cliffside Drive. They may use it for events, residence, and business purposes as they see fit. Signed, Thomas Vance. Date, October 15th. There was a signature at the bottom. It looked vaguely like mine. My blood didn't boil. It froze. They hadn't just broken in. They had planned this. They had actually sat down and forged a document to steal my house from under me. "This is dated October 15th, I said, looking at Dad. "That's right," Dad smirked. "Remember? We had lunch. You signed it. You said you were too busy to manage the place." "Officer," I said, turning to Martinez. "On October 15th, I was in London. I was presenting at the Global Architecture Summit." Dad's smile faltered. No, you weren't. I have my passport in my car," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I have flight records. I have hotel receipts. And more importantly," I pulled out my phone. "I have this." I opened the security app again. I went to the cloud history. I had searched for keywords earlier while waiting for the cops. "My security system records audio," I explained to Martinez, "and it keeps archives for 30 days. I pressed play on a clip from 2 days ago. The audio was crisp. It was Dad's voice. "Just sign it, Linda. He never checks his mail. If the cops ever come, we show them this. It'll confuse them enough to keep us out of jail for the night. By the time he lawyers up, we'll have made enough money from the parties to fight him." Then Mom's voice, "Make the signature loopier. He does that big T." The silence on the deck was absolute. The only sound was the distant crashing of waves. Officer Martinez looked up from the phone. He looked at Dad. The look of patience was gone. Forgery? Martinez asked, raising an eyebrow. And attempting to file a false report? Dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. The color drained from his face, leaving it a sickly gray. It was a joke, Dad whispered. A prank. Cuff them, Martinez said to his deputies. The moment the metal clicked, the reality shattered their delusion. You can't do this, Mom shrieked as a female deputy spun her around. I'm an old woman. I have sciatica. This is elder abuse. You have the right to remain silent, the deputy recited, unimpressed by the silk kimono. Thomas, Mom screamed, twisting her head to look at me. Her eyes were wide, terrified, and furious. Tell them to stop. We're your parents. You can't let them take us to jail like common criminals. I stood there, hands in my hoodie pockets. I watched the people who were supposed to protect me, the people who were supposed to be my safety net, being restrained because they tried to rob me. I didn't make you criminals, Mom, I said softly. You did that all on your own. I hate you, she spat. I wish you were never born. You greedy, heartless bastard. The words should have hurt. 10 years ago, they would have destroyed me. But tonight, they just bounced off. They were confirmation. I wasn't losing parents. I was losing parasites. Then there was Caleb. He wasn't fighting. He was crying. Snot-nosed, heaving sobs. Thomas, please. He blubbered as Martinez tightened the zip ties around his wrists. I can't go back. The guys inside. They said if I violate probation, I do the full 3 years. Thomas, please. I'll do anything. I'll clean the pool. I'll mow the lawn. Just tell them I'm a tenant. Say I pay rent. He looked so small. The golden child reduced to a beggar. You had a chance, Caleb, I said, stepping closer to him. You had 1,000 chances. I paid for your school, you dropped out. I paid for your apartment, you trashed it. I got you a job with my contractor, you stole tools. I'm sorry, he wailed. I'll change. I swear. No, you won't, I said. Because you've never had to face a consequence in your life. Mom and Dad always stepped in. I always stepped in. I looked at Officer Martinez. Do you have everything you need? We have the video evidence, the forged document, and the testimony of the neighbor. Martinez nodded. We're charging Caleb with burglary, trespassing, and violation of probation. Your parents are looking at fraud, forgery, and accessory to burglary. It's going to be a long night for them. Good, I said. They began to march them toward the squad cars parked in the driveway. My father tried one last dignity play. He stopped by me, glaring. You think you won? You lost your family tonight, Thomas. You're an orphan now. Hope the money keeps you warm. It does, I said. The heating system in this house is excellent. Or it was, until your guests broke the thermostat. I watched them get shoved into the back of the cruisers. The blue and red lights washed over their faces. Mom weeping, Dad fuming, Caleb hyperventilating. As the cars pulled away, heading down the canyon toward the station, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't sadness. It was lightness. The weight I had been carrying for 34 years, the weight of their expectations, their debts, their judgment was gone. It drove away in the back of a police car. I turned back to the house. It was ruined. The floors were sticky. The furniture was slashed. The smell was awful. But it was quiet. It was finally truly quiet. The silence didn't last long. As the police cars faded, the reality of the cleanup hit me. I walked back into the living room. It looked like a bomb had gone off in a winery. But I wasn't alone. Arthur Sterling was standing in my foyer. He was wearing a plaid bathrobe and leaning on his cane, looking at the Aristotle bust on the floor. Aristotle, Arthur mused, tapping the statue with his cane. He once said, probable impossibilities are to be preferred to improbable possibilities. It was improbable your family would ever change, Thomas. It was impossible to keep enabling them. I let out a long, exhausted breath. I'm sorry about the roses, Arthur. I'll send my landscaping crew tomorrow. Arthur waved a hand. Roses grow back. Spines are harder to grow. You grew one tonight, son. I'm proud of you. Hearing that from a retired judge, a man I respected more than my own father, nearly broke me. I nodded, unable to speak, fighting back tears that had nothing to do with sadness. I saw the whole thing from my balcony, Arthur continued. If you need a witness statement for the restraining order, you know where I live. Thank you, I whispered. Get some rest, Arthur said, turning to leave. Or, get a mop. Probably the mop first. I spent the next 4 hours doing triage. I couldn't clean it all, but I could secure it. I boarded up the broken window with plywood from the garage. I locked the remaining valuables in the master safe. I tossed the ruined rugs outside. At 7 a.m., as the sun began to rise over the Pacific, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges, I sat on the edge of the pool. The water was still murky from whatever had been thrown in it, but the view was still perfect. My phone buzzed. I expected it to be a lawyer, or maybe a bail bondsman begging for money I wouldn't give. It was a notification from Instagram. Caleb Vance has started a live video. I tapped it. Caleb was in the holding cell. He must have smuggled a phone in, or maybe he hadn't been processed fully yet. He looked terrible. Mascara from one of the girls had smeared on his white jacket. Hey guys, Caleb whispered into the phone, looking around nervously. I'm in jail. My own brother put me here. He made a sad face, the one he used to use to get extra dessert. Thomas Vance, the big rich architect. He invited us to a family reunion and then he snapped. He called the cops because we spilled a drink. He's mentally unstable, guys. He's dangerous. We're the victims here. Please, if anyone can help with bail. Link in bio. I watched the comments roll in. OMG, that's terrible. Rich people are so heartless. Stay strong, Caleb. Then Mom joined the stream. She wasn't in the same cell, but she was commenting from her account. Linda Vance. My son has abandoned us. He assaulted his father. We are terrified. We need a good lawyer. They were doing it. They were launching the smear campaign. They knew they lost the legal battle, so they were trying to win the court of public opinion. They wanted to destroy my reputation, my business, my life. I stared at the screen. A normal person might have panicked. A normal person might have called them and begged them to stop. But I wasn't normal anymore. I was free. I took a screenshot of the live stream. Then I opened my photo gallery. I selected the video of Dad explaining the forgery. I selected the video of Mom laughing about stealing the deed. I selected the clip of Caleb selling tickets to my bedroom. I opened my own social media. I had a modest following, mostly clients and other architects, but I knew how the internet worked. Truth is flammable. I drafted a post. Title, The Truth About Last Night. Caption, my family says I abandoned them. Here is the security footage of them breaking into my home, forging my signature, and selling tickets to strangers. You decide who the victim is. My finger hovered over the post button. If I did this, there was no going back. It wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a nuclear option. It would humiliate them publicly. It would ensure they could never grift another relative again. I looked at the sunrise. I thought about the college fund. I thought about the insults. I thought about the contract Dad forged. I pressed post. Game on, I said to the ocean. I watched the post button turn gray, signaling that my message was live. For a moment, nothing happened. The ocean kept crashing. The sun kept rising. But in the digital world, I had just dropped a bomb on the Vance family legacy. Within 10 minutes, my phone wasn't just buzzing. It was convulsing. The first notifications were from my own circle. Clients, fellow architects, contractors, people who knew me as the quiet, professional guy who obsessively checked specs. Thomas, I just saw the video. Is that your dad? Unbelievable. The audacity. I'm so sorry you're going through this. Need a character witness? I'm there. Then came the comments on the post itself. The internet detectives worked fast. They found the link to Caleb's fundraiser and reported it en masse for fraud. They found Mom's Facebook page where she had been bragging about her beach house for months. The tide of public opinion didn't just turn. It became a tsunami. By 9 a.m., the GoFundMe page was taken down by the platform for violating terms of service. By 10 a.m., Caleb's influencer friends had deleted every photo of themselves at the party, terrified of being associated with a crime scene. At 11 a.m., my lawyer, Robert Stone, called. Thomas. Stone's voice was gravelly and calm, the exact opposite of my family. I've just spoken to the public defender assigned to your brother and parents. They want to cut a deal. They want you to drop the charges in exchange for a public apology. I laughed. It was a cold, hollow sound in the empty house. An apology? Robert, they did $200,000 worth of damage. They forged my signature. An apology doesn't fix my Italian marble. I know, Stone said. I told them that wasn't on the table. So here is the reality. The DA is pushing forward with the criminal charges regardless of what you do. Forgery is a state crime, and the DA hates it. But for the civil damages, we need to talk about assets. They don't have any money, I said. You know that. They have a house in Ohio, Stone replied. It's paid off, isn't it? You paid it off for them 5 years ago. I froze. The house in Ohio. The house I grew up in. The house where I was told I wasn't good enough. The house where Caleb was worshipped. I had written a check for $145,000 to clear their mortgage as a thank you when I got my first big bonus. Yes, I said. It's paid off. Good, Stone said, because I'm filing a lien on it this afternoon. If they can't pay the damages in cash, we force a sale. The process took 3 agonizing months. During that time, I didn't see them, but I felt them. They tried to call me from different numbers. They sent letters, pages and pages of scribbled guilt trips. How can you sleep at night? Mom wrote, we are your flesh and blood. You are choosing money over family. I didn't open them. I put them directly into a box marked evidence. The final confrontation didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in a mediation conference room in downtown Los Angeles. It was sterile, with gray carpets and fluorescent lights that hummed too loudly. I sat on one side of the long mahogany table with Stone. On the other side sat Jerry, Linda, and Caleb. They looked awful. Dad had aged 10 years. He wasn't wearing his fedora. He was wearing a cheap suit that didn't fit, looking small and defeated. Mom looked haggard, her roots showing gray, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. And Caleb looked broken. He was out on bail, which an aunt had put up her car title for, but the swagger was gone. He sat with his head down, picking at his cuticles. When I walked in, Mom let out a sob. Thomas, my baby. Mrs. Vance. Stone cut in sharply. Direct all communication to me. He's my son, she screamed, slamming her hand on the table. I don't need a lawyer to talk to my son. Thomas, look at us. Look what you're doing. Your father is having heart palpitations. Caleb can't get a job. We are ruined. I looked at them. I really looked at them. For years, their anger had controlled me. Their disappointment had been my compass. But now, I felt nothing but pity. You ruined yourselves, I said calmly. I just turned on the lights. We have the itemized bill for the damages. Stone slid a thick binder across the table. Structural damage to the patio. Replacement of the custom HVAC unit. Restoration of the Carrera marble. Replacement of the vintage wine collection. Legal fees. Security upgrades. Total, $428,000. Dad picked up the binder. His hands were shaking. We don't have this kind of money, Thomas. You know that. We know, Stone said. That's why we've prepared the paperwork for the liquidation of your primary residence in Ohio. The room went silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioner. Our house. Mom whispered. You want to take our home? It's not your home, I said, my voice steady. It's an asset, and it's the only asset you have that covers the debt you owe me. I raised you in that house, Mom shrieked. I bathed you in that sink. I cooked your meals in that kitchen. How dare you? And you forged my signature to steal my house? I countered, leaning forward. You tried to take the one thing that was mine. You wanted to give it to Caleb. Well, now Caleb has cost you your house. It seems poetic, doesn't it? Caleb finally looked up. His eyes were red. Tom, please. I'm facing 3 years. If we lose the house, where are Mom and Dad gonna go? They're old. Maybe they can stay with you, I suggested. Oh wait, you still live in their basement. Well, I guess you'll all have to figure that out together. You're the golden child. Caleb, isn't this your time to shine? Isn't this where you step up and support the family like I've been doing for a decade? Caleb shrank back into his chair. We all knew the answer. Caleb couldn't support a hamster, let alone 2 elderly adults. Sign the papers, Stone said, or we go to trial. And if we go to trial, Thomas will push for the maximum sentence on the fraud charges. Right now, if you sign over the house and cover the damages, he is willing to advocate for leniency on the criminal side for you too. Not for Caleb, Caleb is on his own. But for you, Jerry and Linda. It was the final wedge. I offered them a lifeline, but only if they sacrificed their comfort. Dad looked at Mom. They communicated in a silent look of desperation. They realized that their blind loyalty to Caleb had finally cost them everything. We sign, Dad croaked. Jerry, no. Mom grabbed his arm. We have to, Linda. Dad snapped, his voice cracking. We have no money. We have no lawyers. And he's right. Dad looked at me. There was no love in his eyes, only fear. He's beaten us. They signed the papers. The scratch of the pen against the paper was the loudest sound in the world. It was the sound of a cord being cut. As they stood up to leave, Mom paused at the door. She didn't look back at me. She looked at the wall. You have your money, Thomas, she said bitterly. But you have no mother. Don't come to my funeral. I won't, I said. I've already mourned you. I mourned you the day I realized you loved my wallet more than you loved me. They walked out. Caleb tried to follow them, but Dad pushed him away. Get your own ride, Dad muttered to his favorite son. You've done enough. I watched them fracture in the hallway. The toxic triad had dissolved. I sat back in the chair and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was 8 years old. 6 months later, the sun was setting over the Pacific, turning the ocean into a sheet of hammered copper. I sat on the deck of the Laguna house, my feet resting on the newly repaired railing. The house was different now. I had changed it. I ripped out the marble island that had been stained and replaced it with a warm, dark granite. I changed the furniture. I even repainted the walls. I needed to exorcise the ghosts of that night. I needed to make sure that when I walked in, I didn't see the chaos of the party. I saw only my own design. The air was filled with the smell of grilling steak. Medium rare, right? I turned. Arthur Sterling was manning the grill. The retired judge had become a fixture in my life. We had dinner once a week. He didn't ask me for money. He didn't ask me for favors. He asked me about my day. He asked me about architecture. He told me stories about his time on the bench. Is there any other way to eat it? I smiled, taking a sip of iced tea. Good man, Arthur nodded. My phone sat on the table. It was quiet. I had changed my number the day after the settlement. I blocked every relative who had sided with my parents. My circle had shrunk significantly, but the quality had skyrocketed. I knew what had happened to them. Small towns talk and information travels. The house in Ohio sold quickly. The proceeds paid for the repairs to my villa, the legal fees, and the rest went to the bank. My parents were left with almost nothing. They moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in a rough part of town. Dad had to go back to work at 70, greeting customers at a hardware store. Mom was apparently working at a call center. And Caleb? Justice is rarely perfect, but sometimes it rhymes. Caleb didn't get the 3 years in prison, but he didn't walk free either. Because of his prior record and the sheer scale of the damages, the judge, a colleague of Arthur's, though Arthur swore he didn't pull strings, gave him a split sentence. 6 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of strict probation and 500 hours of community service. The last I heard, Caleb was fulfilling his community service hours by cleaning up trash on the public beaches of Santa Monica. I drove past there once a few weeks ago. I saw a guy in an orange vest, spearing candy wrappers with a stick. He looked like Caleb, sunburned, miserable, picking up after other people's parties. I didn't honk. I didn't stop to gloat. I just kept driving. I had a meeting to get to. "You're thinking about them," Arthur said, placing a plate of steak and asparagus in front of me. "Not really," I admitted. "I was thinking about how quiet it is." "Peace is expensive," Arthur said, sitting down. "You paid a high price for it, Thomas. But now you own it. Free and clear." "I used to think family was everything," I said, cutting into the steak. "That's what society tells you, right? Blood is thicker than water. Family first. It's drilled into us." The full quote, Arthur corrected, is "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." It means the bonds you choose, the soldiers you bleed with, the friends you trust, are stronger than the ones you're born into by accident. I looked at him. "I like that. You built a house, Thomas?" Arthur gestured to the glass walls around us. "But now you're building a home. A home isn't about the address. It's about who you let through the front door. You finally installed a lock on your life." He was right. For years, I had been an open door. I let them walk in with muddy shoes, track dirt across my soul, and eat my food while complaining about the service. I thought if I just gave more, if I was just more successful, eventually they would respect me. But you cannot buy respect from people who profit from your insecurity. You cannot find love in a well that has been poisoned. I looked out at the ocean. The first star was appearing in the darkening sky. I wasn't lonely. That was the surprise. I thought cutting them off would leave a hole in my heart. Instead, it allowed the wound to finally close. I had Sarah, my assistant who was more loyal than any sister. I had Arthur, a mentor who was more of a father than Jerry ever was. I had my work. And most importantly, I had myself. I raised my glass to Arthur. "To the covenant." Arthur clinked his glass against mine. "To the covenant." The steak was perfect. The wine was cheap. I stopped buying the vintage stuff for a while, but it tasted better than the $300 bottle Caleb had sprayed on the floor. Tasted like freedom. This brings us to the end of my journey, but I hope it's the beginning of yours if you are stuck in a similar shadow. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't calling the police. It wasn't the lawsuit. It was overcoming the programming that said I was a bad person for saying no. We are taught that boundaries are selfish. But this story is proof that boundaries are the only way to survive toxic entitlement. My parents didn't steal from me because they were poor. They stole from me because they didn't respect me. Financial abuse is real, and it often hides behind the mask of family obligation. If you are the one always giving, always rescuing, and always apologizing for your success, stop. Ask yourself, if I stopped paying, would they still call? If the answer is no, you don't have a family. You have hostages. You have the right to your own labor. You have the right to your own peace. And you have the right to close the door, change the locks, and never look back. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to relive, but reading your comments has been the best therapy I could ask for. Now, I want to hear from you. What is the one lesson you are taking away from this story? Is it about financial boundaries? Is it about the golden child dynamic? Or is it simply the courage to walk away? Please leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, or simply type the word "good" if you think this story carried a valuable lesson. Stay strong, build your own covenant, and protect your peace at all costs.